This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This, I promise you, is a super special edition of the Impact Podcast. We've got with us from Utah today, Christina Qi. Welcome to Impact, Christina.
Thank you for having me, John. Super excited to be here.
Well, Christina, I've already told you I'm a huge fan, but we're going to turn my whole audience into huge fans of Christina Qi today. And we're going to be talking about your life and your journey. And first, I'd just love to hear where you were born and how you came to America and things of that such.
Yeah, so I was actually born in China. I don't have an accent anymore, actually, because my parents immigrated to Utah when I was 3. And so it kind of went full circle because then I lived in Boston for quite a while, actually, and then came back to Utah over the pandemic. And now I'm really close to my parents. So have absolutely loved it here. Do I speak Chinese anymore? Kind of is always my answer because I'm not really, never really learned it in school, unfortunately. But I do speak it a little bit. I'm a little bit conversational. So that's my current level. Yep.
Which part of China were you born in? Just so
I was born in Beijing. Yeah. I still have a lot of family there. So all my cousins and my grandparents, and hope to see them again. It's been a while.
when you were a little girl, did mom and dad speak to you primarily in Chinese, or was English your first language? How did that go?
So Chinese, was my first language. Okay. I cannot believe that I spoke Chinise. Wow. Was I really? Like, babies learn so fast, you never know. And then 5 years later, I was just speaking only English, apparently. So
that's so nice. So then you grew up in Utah. How was your growing up experience? Did you have were you always interested in entrepreneurship and finance, or was that something that evolved after high school?
Absolutely not. I was not interested in entrepreneurship. I didn't even know what it was. We never really learned it in school either. I just went to the public school system in Utah, at a, I hate to say that word. It's like everyone calls it a ghetto school, but it's just unranked, kind of not really on the map anywhere, like that kind of school. And really enjoyed it. I loved the experience there. I loved the creativity and freedom and stuff, but didn't know what entrepreneurship was. Didn't even know what it was in college either. So it just was not in my lifestyle. Did not have any influence whatsoever. Didn't have any friends who were entrepreneurs, or didn't have any connections or parents, friends, or anything like that of that sort. So I just was a typical immigrant, I guess. I don't know.
But and also as a young lady growing up in Utah, you fell in love with the art of anime.
Yeah, of course. I hope that's not too weird these days. I think back in the day it was kind of odd because it's like anime was kind of a weird thing. For those who aren't familiar, it's just Japanese animations, like those cartoons you see on TV. I love cartoons too, by the way. So still to this day, it's never changed. It's always just kind of been a part of me. And I've really enjoyed that escape from, sometimes reality is kind of boring and then you go watch these cartoons. It's really fun and you learn a lot of life lessons.
True.
And yeah, I love it. Still to this day, I still go to anime conventions. A lot of my friends I meet through these events and, have similarities in common. So yeah, absolutely love it.
Okay, so now let's understand this. So now you're graduating high school in Utah. And when you were graduating high school, what was your top 3 choices of colleges to go to? What was on your radar then?
Yeah. To be honest, I wanted to go to the school my parents went to, which was Utah State University, which is up north in Logan, Utah, just like northern Utah. And it's a great school. I absolutely love it. But then one of my friends told me, because I was a nerd in high school, and to give you a sense, like I liked anime so much, I made a Naruto costume, which is like this famous anime, and basically I wore it the day when I went to go take the SAT. And so like I like because like my thesis on this, or my, what do you call it, like mentality on wearing weird costumes to take tests is like, even if the day goes bad and I bomb the test and it goes horribly, at least I did one thing right today, which is I dressed up and did something kind of funny, and I looked nice that day, right? And so that's so that's my mentality. So my friend was like, why don't you go apply to MIT, that's where all the nerds are and stuff, right? And I had a funny experience as well, because for homecoming I did the same thing. I like to dress up weirdly. So for homecoming, for our high school, like in Utah, it's big on prom and homecoming and dances. And so we had like the nominations for homecoming queen, and I was nominated by science club only because I was the only girl in the club. So like, there's no one else to nominate. So and so like we have a parade that happens during homecoming, and during the parade, you're supposed to wear a dress and everything. So I wore like a lab coat, and I had like a beaker and like lab goggles on, and of course people were like, oh my gosh, this is really weird, right? And so so I did feel a little bit like out of place sometimes during moments like that, when there were a lot of moms in the audience, a lot of the typical kind of, I don't know, stage moms, and they were definitely not happy with how I looked. And so then I remember getting an email on my phone. It was actually that same day I checked my phone. I remember, and this was like the old phones where the emails, I don't know, it was really old, but I remember seeing it, and there was, it said like, why don't you apply to MIT? And then there was like a photo at the bottom with like a girl with a beaker, like in a lab coat. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's me, so that was actually what made me decide to apply, was like seeing that kind of inspiration. Like there's people at the school who look like me. And so I applied, I got in. Do I deserve it? I will never know. Half the time I think no, half the time I think yes. And so I'm just grateful that, that happened. I got very lucky. And then the rest was, history after that. I mean, I struggled at MIT though too. So I'm happy to tell you about my struggles there if you'd like, but well,
wait a second. Let's just say this. That's a culture shock. First of all, let me just talk about a culture shock. I grew up in New York City. So it's one thing to move from China to New York City or LA, let's say.
Yeah.
To move from China to Utah, that's a culture shock. And I don't know of a bigger culture shock from Utah to then Boston, Cambridge area. I mean, that's another very, that's culturally pretty different. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah, I had the biggest culture shock when I first came to Boston, not just academically speaking, because everyone was so smart, but also culturally in terms of like boba or bubble tea. I didn't even know what that was. My white friend introduced it to me, and he's like, you're not Asian if you don't know this. Like even stuff like Korean food I had for the first time in Boston, Indian food, Ethiopian food, just different cuisines that in Utah, I'm sure now they exist. Now they're very popular, but back in the day, it was kind of like we grew up on like, sandwiches and Subway and, that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And then the Chinese food, of course, that my mom would cook for me. So that was about it.
Christina, do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother who he's 12 years younger than me. And so he's a freshman at the University of Utah. So I see him on the weekends.
I understand. Okay. So you were really in many ways raised almost like as an only child in many ways.
Yep. Yeah, I was the only child for pretty much. Like my first year of college was Alex's first year of elementary school.
Wow.
So yeah, I was we never really, it's kind of like an only child in that sense.
So now you're at MIT. Did you understand yet what you really wanted to do when you got there, or that was just a journey unto itself at MIT?
In college, like I'm sure you guys all have experiences, like you have the friends who they just know from day one when they're born what they want to do. I have friends who are like that. They're like when they're 5 years old, they're like, I want to be an astronaut. And now they're like an astronaut, or I want to be a doctor, For me, I was one of those students who had no idea. I absolutely was clueless about what I wanted to do. Everything sounded scary, to be honest. Like every job, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be dissecting bodies. I don't want to be doing this. I didn't want to do any of this kind of work. Nothing was like really, that exciting to me personally. And so, I definitely struggled a lot in terms of finding what major was right for me at the time. So,
and as a young girl growing up, what did mom and dad do that informed you? Just so what the audience understands, what was your background in terms of mom and dad?
Yeah. So my parents were surprisingly very supportive of me. I'm very lucky to have, Asian parents who were super nice and just supportive of me, and they didn't understand what I do. They don't understand even like my career path at all. They have no idea because they don't know anything about finance. My dad is a civil engineer, and my mom works for Utah State, like the state government.
Got it.
So yeah, like, they both have stable careers,
Right.
but I guess one cultural difference would just be like their definition of like stability, their definition of an ideal job is like they want to work somewhere for 40 years, right? And then retire.
Right.
They like that stability aspect. Whereas for a lot of millennials, it's like we switch jobs year after year. The average millennial has 17 jobs before retirement. And so, I was growing up in a different era altogether where we were switching jobs. And of course, that worries every older parent who's not used to that kind of culture,
It's true. It's really true. So now you're okay. So you're at MIT. Everything sounds a little scary. You didn't go in with any predisposed notions of what you wanted to become. How did that evolve into going into finance and actually understanding, both finance is one thing, but becoming an entrepreneur at the same time is another. How did you start going down those concurrent paths, and what informed you? Who were your mentors on those paths?
Yeah, for sure. I fell into finance out of a string of failures in my personal and professional life. Not even gonna lie about that. Like I struggled and I wanted to major in biology when I first came in, and struggled in biology class. I got a C. And the professor kind of came to me and was like, "You probably shouldn't declare a major." And I was like, "Oh, you're right." And so then I started taking, because MIT, everyone at the time was taking computer science classes. To become being a software engineer is the most lucrative job right now. So I took computer science courses, and I struggled as well, to be honest.
Right.
And I remember after the first exam, I was like, this is just also not for me. I'm just not smart enough, or just couldn't do it. And so I ended up falling into declaring, because it was the end of the year by then. I was like, oh crap, I don't have anything I want to do. Everyone's like, well, just declare the easiest major at MIT, which is called management science, which is like the business major. That's the only kind of businessy major at the school that's financy and everything combined. And so I declared in management, and then fast forward, I got very lucky, by the way. I didn't know what it was. Who knows? I was a kid. I was like, what's management? And what is that?
Exactly. What are you doing? Who knows anything at that age?
What does that even mean, right? Like, how am I supposed to know? I'm like literally 18 years old, like declaring a major in management. And so it was just kind of funny. But then I got lucky in terms of like, I realized internships, right? Like every company needs a finance person. Every company needs a marketing person, an operations person. It was like, I got super lucky in that sense that there are surprisingly a lot of jobs that require people, with a finance related degree, and management was pretty close to that. So I interned on Wall Street for a bunch of summers, and in Utah too. So
really
did all my little internships every summer. And so that's how I got really my foot in the door in the financial industry, is just finding internships. And by the way, for people, there's some people who are like, how do I get a job in finance? Like, how do I, apply to Goldman Sachs, New York, right? No one responds. I was the same way. I got rejected by like a lot of New York firms. If I apply to like investment banking or sales and trading, they're just going to reject me. Then I realized the key is you apply to Utah, which lucky for me, I was raised here. So it's like my home anyway, but apply to some other location that's like not New York, and apply to like operations or like, middle office or back office. And you get your foot in the door. It's a lot easier to get into sales and trading the next year, or after graduation. So that's how I did it.
Well, not only did you just give a great little pearl of wisdom and secret of how to get a job, but most people don't even realize that Goldman Sachs's Salt Lake City office is one of their biggest offices in the whole country, if not their biggest office.
It is. Yeah, it is huge now. They have multiple buildings, and they're like twice as big as when I did my internship already. And the other thing I should mention is that the internship was the best internship experience I've ever had compared to some of the larger city internships. A lot of it was because the interns were a lot more friendly. We're all in Utah, everyone mostly is in a new city, except for me. I'm like in my hometown. So like we went skiing that summer because some of the mountains they have snow. We went horseback riding. Like we did a lot of things that, you don't really get in a New York City internship. And the hours were better, like people would tell us, oh, take a day off. It's okay. We'll still pay you and everything. Whereas that kind of stuff doesn't happen in New York. Like you got to work, you got to work your butt off.
Right. And it's great. It was in your hometown. What a better situation than that. That's awesome. So now you start, this evolution's happening. And when does that like light bulb go off that I'm pretty good at this, and this could be me? Like, when was that? Like, how old were you, and where were you in the MIT journey when that light bulb went off?
It was in my final internship, and it wasn't a light bulb. It was another failure. I'm sorry to mention so many failures in my life, but this is just true. And it's just what happened was, I actually really wanted to get the return offer for the internship, but we had to do a final project for this internship. And basically we had to come up with a stock trading strategy. And I was like, well, since I have a technical background, I'll come up with a more quantitative strategy. And for those of you who aren't familiar, basically in trading, there's like a discretionary, which is like non-quantitative, and then there's quantitative stuff. Discretionary is like you look at fundamentals, like different ratios, like P ratios or Sharpe ratios, book to market ratios, and then you determine how successful the company's going to be, and then you trade based off of kind of fundamental information. For quantitative strategy, actually, what we do is we look at historical, usually like data, right? So we look at data on like patterns, and we look at patterns in that data. Like, okay, when Google stock goes up, does Microsoft stock also go up eventually, right? And chances are they might. And so just looking at little correlations between different stocks over time and looking at that data. So I came up with a strategy, very basic, very fundamental like that, about like correlations or co-integrations between, different stocks in the market, and presented it as my final project. Everyone worked really hard on their projects. And I was devastated because one was when I was presenting it, my my boss laughed, my boss's boss laughed in my face, like different team members, people were kind of mocking me because they really didn't like it. And I worked on a discretionary trading team. So I worked on a team that did fundamental stuff. They didn't understand, or maybe they just, didn't appreciate like quantitative strategies at the time. And so they really hated what I did. And, I felt horrible. And I remember apparently I cried. According to my friends, I left the internship crying, and like I was traumatized the rest of the day. But then I didn't get a return offer, and I really wanted, I really, really wanted it. And so I was devastated. So I returned back on campus, and I remember it's my senior year now. And I felt I just felt depressed a little bit. I didn't want to wake up. I didn't, just had trouble figuring out like, okay, do I really want to apply to jobs again on Wall Street, and do this again? And then one of my friends was like, why don't you just, that strategy you did, why don't you trade it on your own? And if it doesn't work, then you'll know they were right. And if it does work, then, either way, you'll have closure, right, on the situation. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Maybe because I just felt this maybe like a lack of closure for that internship. And so I started trading. I just got an account on, back then there's Interactive Brokers, I guess was the big one. Nowadays, now that you guys get Robinhood, there's a lot of other tools out there you can use. But we had Interactive Brokers. And so I just got an account on there, and slowly started to figure out how to trade it. And at first, it was just $1,000 we started, because like that was the amount I had saved up from the internship. And then after a while, so first it didn't work, and then after some tweaking and stuff, it actually started working. And so I was really I was just shocked. And by the end of the school year, I had made around like $40,000 or so, and for like literally 1,000 to 40,000. And that was
semesters. In 2 semesters you did.
2 semesters, yeah.
Wow.
And that was enough for me to pay off my student loans. And so, because I was $40,000 in debt, by the way, at the time too. So coincidentally, I ended up graduating pretty much right after graduation. I was able to pay off my loans relatively quickly because of that. And so that was when I realized, like, it's not just that, oh, I can make a lot of money. It was more like, I can do this on my own. I don't need to necessarily work in that kind of environment, but maybe just try this out and see what happens. And so that's how I got into entrepreneurship. It wasn't like I had a cool idea to solve the planet, to save the planet, or, cure disease or something. It's literally like I had nothing to do with my skill set. And
wow. Okay. For our listeners and our viewers who've just joined us, we're so excited to have with us today Christina Qi. You could find her at Christina Qi. Her last name is spelled QI.com, ChristinaQI.com, or she's also the CEO of Dado Bento, which we're going to get into in a couple of minutes. You can find her at dadabento.com, DATABENTO.com. Christina, wait a second now. You went from $1,000 to $40,000, but you really didn't even have any mentors or any coach. You figured this whole algorithm out on your own and created it, but there was no footsteps in the sand prior to you doing this that you could look to or that informed you. Is that correct?
Yeah, there were some books that I did read. There were some guides, but I didn't have any kind of human mentors or teachers or advisors. There were some professors that were helpful. So I ended up my senior spring. That was when I started getting into it. I was like, why don't I just take some MBA level courses? And so at MIT, it's a lottery system. I literally lotteried in all 1,000 of my points into one of the particular classes was actually a retirement finance / asset management class, and it was taught by a Nobel Prize winner. Robert Merton, who, if you've ever in finance, for those of you who ever took a class and you learn about Black-Scholes or Black-Scholes Merton, that's the Merton behind. And so he was one of the professors, for example, who I learned a lot from, just about life lessons. He started long-term capital management, and historically, if you just want to Google that, it's such a fascinating history because they were one of the biggest hedge fund failures of all time. And I think it was Warren Buffett or someone that had to like buy them out at the end. And but it's just his stories and his real life lessons were super helpful. And so there were definitely a few professors, here and there that were super, super supportive of kind of like my journey from the very beginning, even though, yes, I was a nobody student. Yeah, I got a C in his class. not gonna lie, I was not like the all-star student whatsoever, but just kind of kept in touch with that's one thing I would always say is like, keep in touch with your professors, keep in touch with, all the kind of, I know for me, it was like, I felt like I was a kid. So I was like, keep in touch with the adults, in your life. And now I'm like the old adult, 12 years later, I'm like the old person, but yeah, always like, don't be afraid to keep in touch with them, and tell them what you're up to. And like, I know for them, it's like, it's draining, for me, even when I get emails every day with students asking me for career advice and stuff like that. But, then I realized like, I needed that too back in the day, right? I was that person that needed it. And so just learned so many lessons from those experiences. And by the way, if you ever ask people for advice, always figure out a way you can help them first. That's how I get a response back now from let's say my old professors. I need their help on something. I'll be like, by the way, I can forward, I know you have an internship posting. I'll forward it to all of my network here, so just figure out ways that you can like help them. And I think that's one way that, helped me throughout my entire career. Yeah.
So now you went from 1,000 to 40, you paid off your student loans, which must have been a very happy day. Mm-hmm. And so what was then the plan from there? Now that you knew you could do it and you had figured out this algorithm, what was the next step in terms of life after college?
Yeah. So we were just starting, I guess it's called the hedge fund, because that's what a hedge fund does is, we manage other people's money. People always ask, why did you not manage your own money? I'm like, we didn't have any money to manage, like my parents don't have the money. Nobody has the money. So, and I found, luckily found some co-founders as well, people who wanted to work with me. And by the way, that's the first validation for any startup. The best validation you can get at the early stage is when another human being drops everything and wants to work with you on this idea and not make any money for a while and take that huge risk in life. And I was really grateful, especially like one of my co-founders who joined, he had offers from like Apple and VMware, all these really cool companies. And he ended up turning down all the offers and just, joining us. And literally we all made nothing for a very long time until, we ended up having to launch the fund and then going through there. But it was definitely a big roller coaster of a journey. Like fun, I can talk about fundraising now. I can talk about hiring. We made so many mistakes. A funny story was we wrote a bunch of I don't know if anyone's heard of Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a famous book. Yeah, and
people say that's the ultimate investment tool because allegedly Ray Dalio is one of the the legends of Wall Street in the investment world. So go ahead.
He runs Bridgewater's is or was the biggest hedge fund, I believe, right now in the world. So it's impressive. But anyway, so we wrote down our own list. We were like, oh, his principles sound, kind of, let's write our own list of principles based on, and, we're millennials, right? So we wrote our own list of things that we wanted. And so just to give you some funny examples, one was like, we wanted a flat managerial structure. We wanted the office culture to be almost like more like Google when you walk in as well, like having lots of perks and free food and, like just making the office environment more, I guess, lots of benefits and perks and stuff like that. And then a flat managerial structure, we did that just because I was hiring people back then who were 3 times my age. And so it was really important for us to, in order to hire them, we wanted to make sure everyone had the same title. So just kind of things like that. Or another example is hiring service providers with the biggest names because we didn't have a reputation. So let's hire people like lawyers or accountants that are like household names, right? So that they can help with our reputation. And it turns out almost all of those principles that we wrote down turned out wrong in the end. And that's what my book is about. So I don't know if anyone wants to check out my website. I don't know if I'm going to publish it, to be honest. I wrote about it just because it was therapeutic for me to be like, wow, all of these things turned out wrong. And like, I need to write about this so that other people don't have to go through that, and experience it.
I think it's extraordinarily valuable, and I hope you do publish it. I want to get to the book in a second, though. But how informative was Ray Dalio's book? Were his principles informative and helpful, or were they counterintuitive to what you needed as a millennial?
Yeah, I think they were definitely counterintuitive. And then that's the other thing is like, I think his book is really good for his company and for his kind of culture, right? And for his time when he started the company, I think it definitely worked out really well. But for a lot of us, like millennials, it's like, one thing I noticed is a lot of people tend to, there's a little bit of brain drain from New York to, Silicon Valley these days, right? Especially from like just Wall Street in general. People don't want to work on Wall Street anymore. It's a revolving door. I remember when I interned at Goldman Sachs, like the average tenure there was 18 months before they left and usually went to a tech firm next. And so, and the reason why that happens is a lot of it's because tech is, not because it's just where it's at, but also culture wise. I think tech does a lot of things that are a little bit different from kind of Ray Dalio's culture over here, right, in finance. And so like his concept of baseball cards, like, I understand why it works for Bridgewater, but there's a reason why, not a lot of other companies like startups would not really want to adopt that kind of culture. And there's a reason why people leave, kind of cultures like that and want to go to a place where they're not being judged, by like factors like that. And, so that's one thing I just want to mention. And then the other thing is like, there's a lot of, racial and other, I guess, factors behind the scenes that stereotype you into certain, like they want to characterize you or whatever. And I just don't think that would have worked well for our company at the time. So that was why we were like, oh, these are kind of are weird and let's come up with our own that are better. And it turns out ours were not better in the end, guys. So lesson learned there is we did not know any better. And like, went through a lot.
Well, the lesson learned there, though, what you point out, though, is really brilliant in that everything's contextual. What worked for Ray Dalio and his generation and his firm doesn't work for the next co-founder down the road always. That's not the roadmap that everyone should just follow, and you can be successful if you follow that roadmap.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of the radical transparency that he mentioned. So for example, we used to share everyone's salaries and, bonuses and stuff like that. And guess what happened? People left because of that. It caused drama and politics in the team. We had someone, but this is also a factor, an effect of being flat, by the way, which was one of the flat structures. Everyone's called partner. We hired an office manager and, their job was literally to be honest, it's cleaning the office. It's scheduling meetings. It's like putting everything together in the office because we had a pretty nice office at the time. And so, and I remember, they brought me into a room and they're like, I want a partner salary. And also, they basically saw the list of everyone's salaries and was like, I want like this person's salary, which is like a senior software engineer with, 40 years of experience or something. I was like, oh no. And then that was when I realized like, this is not the right kind of, there's certain information that deserves to be, private. Right. Not because like, I don't know how to describe it. It's mainly because I feel like people feel entitled to like the highest person's salary. And it's discouraging to see like someone earning that much more. But the problem is like, the market is different, right? Like a senior software engineer is highly in demand today. Whereas, an office manager, like I can literally hire my brother today as an office manager to work for me for free. Like, you know what I mean? So like there's certain jobs that are a lot more highly in demand than others. And it's just how the market is. And, so yeah.
Are these lessons in your book? Are these lessons in your book?
Oh yeah. I talk about that. Yeah.
Your book has to be published because these are the lessons. You see, most people want to only talk about their success and making all these great decisions. But as you know, Christina, and I well know at 59 years old, that life is a series of mistakes, and how you learn from those mistakes and how you evolve and iterate from those mistakes is how you really get forward.
Absolutely.
So okay, so the group that you're creating, and this name of this company, your first company was what was that first name of your company?
It's called Domeyard. We named it after the MIT Dome and Harvard Yard, which is where, that was all we really had. And then we didn't like all of our founders, we were Asian, and my last name literally no one can pronounce or spell. And so we didn't want to name it after ourselves. And also, we wanted it to hopefully be a little bit more inclusive. And so we're like, oh, MIT Dome and Harvard Yard. But then now everyone thinks we all come from MIT, which is not true, by the way. The team was very diverse from all over the place.
So was this a group of your friends that decided to opt into this?
We weren't friends initially.
Oh,
We became friends over time,
how
but
did you meet them then? How did you meet your co-founders if they weren't all MIT students?
yeah, so we had one was trading competitions and other community stuff like that. Yeah, the other thing is like we like at one of these trading competitions, one thing I realized is we had nothing in common, different majors, different, schools and stuff. But and we had totally different friend groups and different personalities. But one thing we had in common was we both all three of us actually, we wanted to I guess we all wanted to go out on our own in the financial industry. We wanted to be in finance, but not necessarily work for like a large financial firm at the time. And so that's why I think we just set out to do this together. And then thankfully it turned out well because we had diverse enough backgrounds in that diversity of like, in terms of, having different majors and different friend groups and everything did end up helping us a lot in terms of just having different viewpoints and also just growing the company with, very different types of networks. Yeah.
Fascinating you bring that up because, that's one of the things, now with the whole leaning in on ESG, which also is is a diversity issue. People think diversity has to do with just race and ethnicity, or even gender. But truth be known, diversity is much deeper than that, as you point out, in terms of interest groups, friendship groups, networks. Also, let me just throw another one out to you: generations. You pointed that out with Ray. I have partners and business partners in my various businesses that are in their 80s all the way down to 21 years old. And I'll tell you what, every generation, there's so much information that can come from all different groups. So just to surround yourself with people who look just like yourself, I think for anybody, is a gross error as a founder in any business.
Yeah. Absolutely. For my current company, Dado Bento, we hire, I think 5 different generations by now. I keep forgetting what is it called. Gen Z is like now entering the workforce, which is kind of scary to me. So it's happening. There's another
generation now. Gen Z is Gen Z.
Yeah. I think it's like 1997 and beyond or something. And it just blows my mind that like they're coming into the workforce now. And
So let's go back to Domeyard before we get to Dado Bento, was I really want to go into your new venture. Domeyard, what was the mission when you guys set out? What was the absolute mission and purpose?
Yeah. So for us, to be honest, we're like, oh, we just want to find our place in the financial industry and find some strategies that worked and can hopefully beat the markets enough that we can, take home enough of a salary and survive for a while. And there was no kind of bigger goal of like saving the world or anything like that. And I think actually that's one of the reasons why I ended up leaving in the end, was because that was one of the main reasons. But anyway, so that was our initial goal. It was definitely really fun. Like one was, we weren't making, it's like, we did high frequency trading, by the way. So it's like, this is super controversial industry. I still remember like the pre-Flash Boys days before Michael Lewis's Flash Boys came out. And then the post-Flash Boys days, everything completely changed, by the way, in terms of just the people's perception of what we were, who we were as moral human beings. And so, before Flash Boys came out, I was going to conferences. People were curious and asking questions about quantitative trading. And then I remember the week, then Flash Boys came out. And then the next week I went to another conference and I was on stage with like a panel of people. And I remember someone raised their hand. I think they worked at like Bank of America or something. And they were like, I hate you. I hate everything you're doing. You're ruining the financial industry. I'm like, dude, you work for Bank of America. Like we have the exact same, boss, right? Because my investors are your investors. Like literally my job is I make these investors richer over time. And a lot of them are billionaires. And you do the exact same thing at your wealth management division. Like, and so it was just really funny how their perception, even for Wall Street, they absolutely hated us, even within Wall Street, not to mention outside of Wall Street, everyone absolutely didn't like what we were doing. And I had to, live with that, but also had to learn, how to, I guess, debunk. There are some things that are, there's a reason why HFT is high frequency trading. There's a reason why it has a bad reputation. So there's some bad things about it, but there's also some good things about it too. And so like just kind of making sure that we debunk a lot of the stereotypes about the industry. That's what I spent a lot of, to be honest, like some time, just doing that kind of stuff. That's why I started doing a lot more, I guess what I do, like just speaking at conferences and things like that, was trying to learn how to answer those questions better and learn about what people are concerned about and kind of going from there. But yeah, like, so I'd say like, if people want to go into finance, like absolutely good for you, nothing wrong with going into finance or consulting or anything like that. And, for me, like my reasoning was I was in debt, like I needed to, some way of paying it off and it worked. And it's a competitive job market. I didn't get a return offer from, my other company. So it's not like, it was like, I I struggled, to get a full-time job. And so in this kind of environment, yeah, like if you can get whatever job you can get, good for you, and go for it, right? And then of course, once you're in a position, like for me, it was once a decade later, I realized like, wait a second, what am I doing here? I've achieved everything I wanted to do. And not to mention, there's a couple other reasons. So yes, returns went down. That was one big factor. I was like, there's no scalability in this industry, which also really sucked because we weren't able to really grow as fast as I was hoping. And so there's some reasons like that, but also I was like, what am I doing? Do I want to spend the rest of my life, in high frequency trading and always like fielding all those questions and, dealing with that? And I was like, to be honest, I don't. Like, I want to make a difference in the world. So yeah.
I want to talk about that. But so Domeyard, when did you know in that journey with your other partners that you were onto something and this was going to work? You had a business and it was going to be successful enough to meet the goals that you guys set out and the mission you set out to do?
Yeah, it was, to be honest, really slow. I think it wasn't like, I wish we would be one of those startups where on day one you launch and everyone just runs over to you and you realize, wow, this is it. I've struck gold, right? And that's it in my career. I know I have something good. To be honest, that's not what happened. We struggled immensely. It took us 3 years to get to launch. We were first-time founders. I was very naive. I didn't know what I was really doing, at the time, and had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way, like I mentioned, in terms of all those principles going wrong in the end. Some of those principles led to lawsuits in the end, or led to, just really nasty situations like audits and just situations that it just took up a lot of my time and was very mentally draining. And so we went through all those things, but I will say there were some tables turn moments. One that was kind of funny was during, for my internship, right, I mentioned I didn't get a return offer, and, the team and the boss's boss, whatever, they all hated me. And it was about 5-6 years later, maybe, we were just trading like normal. We had already launched, and we get a phone call, and it was from the company I interned at, and they said, "Hey, we want to invest." And I literally looked at the guy's name, like, that's the name of the guy who like laughed at my presentation. Like, he was hoping him, and I guess he's a part of like what is it called? For the name of the team, but it was like a team that like allocates to hedge funds basically. And so they were hoping to invest in our fund. And I was like, I guess the tables really he didn't know it was me, by the way. Of course he didn't know it was you even. Wow. He didn't know I was his intern, no. So, but that was one of my tables turn moments where, I realized we had made it.
Without giving names, did you take the money?
Oh, we didn't. Okay. Yeah, it was also, just, I don't know. I was just like, nah, it's probably not good.
You're over. Yeah. You're over by then.
Yeah.
That's great. So now after those 3 years of the struggle and you're looking to make it, now it clicked and it took off. I take it. And then it went to the moon.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how to describe it. It was still, it's always been kind of slow here and there, but that was definitely one of the moments when I realized, wow, like, we belong here. And, it's my turn now to reject the person who rejected me many years ago. And not that it's like a karma or anything like that. It's just more like, hey, this is weird. I never would have thought I would be the one saying no, to my old boss's boss. And it was just like such a weird situation that was happening.
How big did Domeyard get? And when did you realize I've made it? I'm a successful founder, and I'm financially doing as well, if not better than I ever thought I'd be doing. When did that like sort of sink in?
We hired, I think the most we had about 20 something people. And I think we were like, wow, we're at critical mass. And then we were trading over 7 billion in a day, dollars, not Zimbabwe dollars, but US dollars. And so we were just, I think for me, those moments of like, wow, we were trading literally so much and really moving, like really making an impact, I think, out there. And so that for me was really great. But also I think personally, like what really made me happy was like helping my parents retire. And like, just, like I'm not a billionaire. Look, I didn't make that, I was making that much money, but it was still enough to like, to make a living, right? And to be well off enough that like, I don't have to, I can pay off my debts, pay off my loans, help my parents pay off their loans, like, help my brother go to college, like just small things here and there, especially for me coming from, the kind of, environment, I always grew up on food stamps and welfare. And so coming from that environment and making it here today, like, I don't need to, become a billionaire to feel like a success, right? It's like, I made it and I was able to help, my family in times of need. And I think that's what really mattered for me. It was like just being able to help the people I love and go from there. So yeah.
What year did you decide to tell your partners it's time for you to move on and make a bigger impact, and that this wasn't the end all be all, it was a great run? How did that work?
Yeah, it actually started from a problem at my work, which was we were wasting a lot of money on data, millions of dollars on data related stuff. We had, dozens of different types of data vendors, exchanges. We'd go to different data sources basically, because data is like our lifeblood in finance, right? If you get bad data and you're trading on bad data, then you're going to lose a lot of money. And so we were, spending so much time and money just like cleaning up data, getting all this bad quality and paying all this money. And then we were using like less than 5% of the data we actually purchased. And so I was really mad about this and complaining. Data sold by headcount too. So it's a very old school industry. So every time we hired someone new, chances are they would be like, Christina, I need XYZ data. Sorry, can you call these vendors? And, I had to figure out who had that data. And so finally we would, what was that happen? So then I would, talk to some of our investors in the fund and some friends in the industry. And one of those friends was from the Goldman Sachs, actually. And so, which is, where I previously interned, but I would talk to them and be like, how did you do your data? How do you get their data? And the Goldman Sachs person is a manager there. And they were like, oh, well, all of our analysts, they share one Bloomberg terminal and they have a little password on a sticky note. And that's our high-tech solution to the problem. And I was like, oh, that's illegal, but they were like, yeah, they're like, well, the turnover at that level is, right. It's like, you've seen this, it's 18 months, it's 12 months, right? It's super fast. So what's the point of buying all this data for them when they're just going to leave anyway? And so then I talked to the analysts, many of whom were my classmates in college. And I'm like, how do you feel about this? And they were like, oh, well, I'm leaving because I don't have any data. And that's just funny chicken and egg problem. And so after a few months, they came to us and they're like, can you create a data solution for us, for the people, at the bottom of these companies who don't have a big budget, who need to get to work, right? Like, and just want to get work done, right? And I was like, that's a good point. I would have benefited as a small company, really would have benefited from this as well. And so that was when I realized like, we should probably work on this and find a solution once and for all to this huge data problem out there. There's been some startups that have tried here and there, have been unsuccessful for various reasons. And so we're like, you know what, let's just go for it. We have the background. We've been working with data for many years now. So we know what good quality data is. And we know how to slice and price it into smaller pieces. So you only pay for what you actually, use. And so let's just do that, give them an easy data platform, self-service. You don't have to talk to a salesperson, streamline everything. So you just get the data in like 5 minutes, on your own. And so that's what we did. We made a data platform for everyone else in the industry, for startups, for financial analysts and all kinds of other people. So it's been a really fun journey.
And that's how Dado Bento was created. And
Yep.
Who's your co-founders with that company? Is it just you, or do you have other co-founders?
So one of my co-founders from Domeyard joined me as well. So yeah, we've been working on this together for some time now. Since 2019, sometime. I don't know if that's a long time, but right before the pandemic was kind of when we decided.
How's this journey going? Now do a little compare and contrast this journey as a co-founder compared to the Domeyard co-founding journey.
Absolutely. I think the second time around, it is a lot easier, to be honest. And the number one reason is because you already have a startup playbook, right? Hopefully by now, a playbook meaning which lawyer to go to, which accountant to go to, how to hire, how to fire, how to compensate people properly, what titles to give people properly, right? And we learned that the hard way from the previous startup of not giving everyone the same title. There's a difference between fairness and equality. And back then we were all about equality, but that's not the right way to go. You got to be fair, guys. And so this time around, we're a lot more fair to people. I think that, so hiring wise, we've learned a lot of big lessons on, making sure we hire the right people, and we're not the right fit for everyone, and we make sure to tell people that during the interview process and be very clear on that. So I think it's just lessons like that, how to fundraise as well, like, how to not waste your time with endless pitch meetings and stuff like that, and how to really drive a close and, really close both in terms of deals, sales and stuff, but also on the fundraising side too. So lots of cool lessons learned, I guess. And, it is still hard. I will say, like, I still feel, stress and pressure in a different way. But now that I'm in my 30s now, so I spent all my 20s working on one startup, and now I'm in my 30s working on this next startup. And so I will say this time around as well, I have a lot more work-life balance in my life. I no longer will sacrifice, let's say, my weekends or my evenings, unless it's like, of course that still happens. I still sacrifice things, but not as bad as I, was in terms of in my 20s. I would sacrifice my health a lot of times for, for the sake of my company. But now I'm like, you know what, I'm aging and I can see my gray hairs, and I'm like, it's just not worth it anymore. I'm just going to live my life and spend my weekends with my family and people I love, as much as I can. And of course, as I'm needed, I still will be there. But if I don't need to be there, then I'm checked out. I'm done. So that was one thing I realized, is setting boundaries is so important.
It is important. Boundaries is a key word that most people don't even understand. Let's go for our listeners and viewers. We've got Christina Qi with us today, and she's just amazing. You could go to Christina Qi. How you spell it is Christina QI.com. ChristinaQI.com, and her company now that she's the CEO of and the co-founder is Dado Bento, DATABENTO.com. So you're 3 years into it. Of course, you were co-founding it during a pandemic. Where are you now in the journey? Where are you where you want it to be? Is it going better than you wanted it to go? Is it what are the struggles that you're finding, and where are you in the journey of Dado Bento?
Yeah, so the pandemic was, both a curse and a blessing in so many different ways. It's been a blessing in that we realized, I think a lot of companies realized, remote work is a possibility. Why do we need to necessarily have a big office and pay all this rent, when we can work from home and be just as productive and have work-life balance. And also we can hire people now from around the world because they can be based anywhere. So I think that was one of the biggest things we learned from the pandemic that was really just great for us. In terms of where we are now, we are still we're right about to do a public launch, actually. So we're still kind of in private beta mode right now. You can technically, if you do want data for some reason, you can sign up on our website. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be offloading people from the wait list over time. And so we're still kind of in that process right now. But overall, I've been very, very happy this time around in terms of, one is just, talking to users and seeing hey, they, people really need this product, that this is such a, data is expensive, and people are wasting a lot of money on it. And both big and small companies come to us and they're like, hey, we need this product, not just because of pricing, by the way, but also because the quality, is better, or because we help them scale faster, scale up and down without having to sign a new license or anything. So we make it a lot easier for teams to scale and grow with us.
And who's your client base? Who's your target clients for Dado Bento?
To be honest, it's anyone that's starting a new data project. It can be large companies. We have I would say right now, about half of our signups are larger established companies like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Google, Amazon. And then the other half are startups whose names you've never heard of before, that are just starting up. And that's how it should be. We want more of those startups because it's we really help them in terms of, we decrease the barrier to entry to zero for them. So that way they only, in a month, if they don't use any data, they don't have to pay us anything. And so it makes it so much easier for startups to get the data they need, to test the data. If it doesn't work, okay, they can cancel and they don't have to pay anything. And so that makes it just so that barrier to entry, we've just lowered it down to zero for a lot of those startups as well. So yeah.
You really democratize data. Is that what you're?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like a vending machine. We call it a vending machine for data, or data as a service. Just trying our best to make it affordable, but also the best quality that you've ever seen. And so it's a shocker to a lot of startups, wait, this is good quality. And it's yeah, because we get it directly from the source, which is the exchange that it's being traded on. We clean it up ourselves. We do a lot of work and then make sure that, it's delivered to them in the best quality. So yeah.
Given your massive success at Domeyard, how hard was it to raise capital to launch Dado Bento?
It still was a struggle for sure. Sometimes it's when there's a difference between the New York investors we had, Domeyard, we get a lot of Wall Street kind of investors and family offices and stuff. And then over here at Dado Bento, it's suddenly I'm talking to Silicon Valley investors for the first time, many of whom I have never heard of, or, just whose names they would never have heard of me. And so that definitely was, a little bit harder, but the good news is we have such good investors. We got very lucky on day one with some really great, seed investors who have, just kind kind of helped us grow, have been supportive of us since then, and very patient with us as well as we go through, the usual hurdles that startups go through. And so, delays and that kind of stuff as well, hiring issues, all those types of problems. And they've just been super supportive and on, just really on our side with all those different problems we've gone through. So
Going back to MIT, help me, because I'm not, I'm not part of these circles, but you always talk about the alumni fraternity at Harvard. Is it similar at MIT?
Oh man, there's a little bit of that sense of like camaraderie, a little bit in terms of like, wow, you went through this hell and I'm going through it too, so it's like we all went through this. There's a little bit of that. So sometimes when I see an alum, I remember like I was at Thanksgiving dinner in like Spain one year and I saw someone wearing the ring. We all have these like rings that when you go to MIT, and I was like, oh, hey. And then we immediately just got along. And, and this person, he was a lot older than me, probably like 40 years older than me, but we both just got along. So we're like, oh, we went to had the same experience. So there's a little bit of that. I definitely feel like, but so there's that, but then at the same time, it's like, a lot of times you're just kind of on your own, to be honest. Like MIT has a really good entrepreneurial ecosystem, of course. But it's kind of like you put into it as much as you get out, just like with any school. And a lot of schools have really good programs too. So I would just say as a founder, like definitely take advantage of the programs that your university offers for alumni, which they do. And then just kind of go from there. For now, it's like, I still use some of the resources that MIT has. Like one of the examples called Venture Mentoring Service. They have, just mentors and stuff like that help me even to this day. But definitely love just staying in touch as much as I can.
Dado Bento Domeyard was headquartered out of Boston. Where's Dado Bento headquartered out of?
So it was funny. We were like 10 floors down from Domeyard in Boston, but it's actually 10 floors down as a WeWork. So Domeyard had its own dedicated office. And then for Dado Bento, my new company, we moved into like a WeWork. And so that way it's like completely empty. I don't think anyone really goes there on a daily basis. Some people might like eat lunch there, but it's not, everyone's pretty much remote at this point. And
but it's in Boston as well.
Yeah. We have a few folks in Boston, but everyone's around the world. So we have one person in Australia, in Switzerland, in China. So just kind of all over the place. And,
So you really had your pick of whoever you wanted to hire, wherever they were. It didn't matter anymore.
Yep. Wow, absolutely.
Awesome. So now what's next for you? I mean, like what lessons, first of all, talk about the book. Why did you write a book, which, you have so many great lessons and you have such a clear voice and such clarity on the lessons you've learned. Talk about writing the book and why you're on the fence of publishing it.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I definitely went through, everyone kind of goes through their own period of self-reflection. It could be depression, it could be other things that you just kind of go through. And I definitely was not feeling very, just very motivated or happy. And I didn't know where I wanted to live, what I wanted to do, all those different questions about like life. And so, and my friend was like, hey, I'm taking this book writing class, why don't you check it out? And I was like, okay, I will. And by the way, for anyone curious, it's called the Creator Institute. And that's literally, if you Google it, you'll find their website. So I signed up and it was a really great program. And the biggest thing it forced me to do is sit down and write, by the way. And I think that was the most valuable thing, is just the motivation to write a chapter a week. And so I just wrote about these things. And it first starts out just with chapter by chapter. And every chapter I wrote about a lesson that I thought was good and then turned out bad in the end. And slowly, like it turned into a book and a manuscript. And that was it. And then at this point, my biggest like hesitation of publishing, by the way, is it's not just because of, it's the biggest reason actually because I'm afraid of getting sued by like the people I mentioned in the book. And so even if I change names and locations, it's pretty obvious sometimes the people I'm mentioning, because we dealt with some pretty famous investors. Lots of them are billionaires in the space, and they have the power and the money to destroy my career. And I don't really want that. I'm like, I want to live like quietly, like by myself with my friends in Utah, like that's what I want to do. And so so I'm like, okay, my editor was like, you should probably make it fiction. And I was like, oh gosh, like that's like rewriting an entire book, so now that's kind of where I'm stuck right now, is like getting the motivation to rewrite a nonfiction book into more of a fictional book, but we'll see.
All right, well, wonderful. So now at very, let's be honest, 31 today is much different than when I was 31, Christina. It's really almost like 21, frankly speaking, and that's only a compliment. So you have a long life ahead of you and a long journey. what's next for you? Dado Bento, I have no doubt you're going to make into a massive success. But what's on your mind in terms of giving back and making an impact? Where do you see your strong, expertise and qualities? Where do you want to spend your time making an impact and making the world a better place?
Yeah, at my previous company, I would actually spend quite a lot of time, up to like 1 day a week, actually volunteering and giving back, and various charities and organizations. So one big one that I helped a lot with is it's called Invest in Girls, and they teach financial literacy concepts to high school girls around the country, basically. And the big reason why is because I was one of those girls where I didn't know what finance was, and girls are discouraged. Usually girls would rather talk about death than money.
Right.
That's what Sally Krawcheck says. Women rather talk about death and other kind of scary concepts than money. And so just realize like this isn't something that means a lot to me. So have been, trying to encourage more women to not be afraid of, not that they don't have to enter finance, but just more, have control over your finances, right? And like use it to empower you and not to discourage you, and just stuff like that. Not being afraid to negotiate or ask for a raise, or just basic concepts, or know how to pay your taxes and what it means, stuff like that. So we just feel like those concepts are so important in life that everyone should have in place. And so that's one of the charities. There's a bunch of other ones too. There's some helping immigrants. There's some helping, just lots of things that I was like, these are causes that like I can see. This was me back in the day. Like I really needed this. Like why not just give back? Because like I know what it's like to be in that position. And so it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed contributing to not just like donating money, pouring money into solutions. Right. That's just half the equation. The other half is really putting your time into it, investing your knowledge and your time. Like I go into the high school classroom and I will teach the students about basic finance because that's what really means a lot. And I think that's what makes a difference, is them seeing a real person who looks like them or who talks like them, and be like, whoa, this is interesting, and hopefully they'll want to learn more. So yeah.
Are you able to do that now, leveraging technology with these young girls, given Zoom and Teams and everything? Is it able to be done that, or is that all done in person with Invest in Girls?
Yeah. So pre-pandemic, it would be almost all in person, I believe. And then now, because of the pandemic, there's a lot more virtual events, which has been nice because then, there's a lot of students from schools in different regions and some of the underserved communities, who are able to join without having to, spend their time like in a classroom necessarily. And so that's been really nice to just have, be able to reach more students around the globe, to be honest. And so that's been really, really fun. I'm grateful for the pandemic for allowing that to happen, because without it, we would still be kind of a lot more regional, a lot of in-person stuff, but I like having a greater reach. Yeah.
What do mom and dad say about all your success? Because obviously they've done such a great job with you. How does someone stay this humble, who's on the cover of Forbes magazine and many other magazines? You're a very unique human being. So what does mom and dad say when they talk about you?
I think the biggest thing they'll always say is like, just they care more that I'm a good person than, how much money I make or anything like that, and I'm grateful, by the way, like I've made enough money to learn that money doesn't bring happiness, which is kind of ironic, right? It's like everyone's goal is like make enough money so that you can learn that money doesn't bring you happiness. But at the same time, it's like my parents definitely, for them, it's like, so long as their kids turn out decent human beings who, respect other people and are good to the world and make a positive impact. I think that's the number one thing that they care about. And, that's just the number one lesson they've instilled in me. So I'll continue to hopefully, improve upon that and be a good person in life. And, that's what matters the most.
Besides your parents, who just sound wonderful, who are your heroes now? Who do you look up to in terms of when you think about where you want to be when you're 40, when you're 60, when you're 75? Who are you looking to, and who inspires you every day to get up and get to it?
Oh man, to be honest, it's a lot of my friends. I have so many different friends who are in different walks of life. And I just am so grateful to get to have friends who have different career paths as well. Like one of my close friends works at Costco, he's literally a truck driver at Costco. I have another friend who is an Uber driver, and another friend who's a full-time parent. And I think it's just having friends who are so inspiring in their different ways. I think that's what inspires me the most. I'm not a social climber. I don't want to be one of those people that like just gets to know billionaires and only friends with billionaires. Like I really don't want to be like that kind of person. I do have some friends who are, but like, again, And like, I think my closest friends are the ones where, we go to anime conventions together, dress up in crazy costumes and continue to, enjoy our lives like that. Right. And I think that means a lot to me. That's how I would rather spend my time. And so, yeah, like that, these friends inspire me the most, like the ones who are making an honest living and are happy, in their current situation. And I think that's very awesome because, and I wish that maybe one day I'll do that. Maybe one day I'll just quit and just chill at home. And I don't know, maybe I really like chocolate. Maybe I'll start a chocolate company or, or just like volunteer. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, well, and maybe just like attend these anime events and just continue enjoying life. But that's, for me, it's like, that's what means a lot. And yeah.
We have a lot of viewers and listeners around the world, and a lot of them are really young and they'll watch you and they'll want to learn, and they want to also become an entrepreneur because, especially now, so much of the world information, as you pointed out, is democratized, and being an entrepreneur is sort of cool. A lot of people have made it very cool, including you. What's your advice to Alex's generation and the next generation coming up that want to follow it, to be a founder and to make, not only be an entrepreneur, but make the world a better place in the process?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd actually say is you do not need to be a founder or a CEO or an entrepreneur or, any C-suite big fancy title in order to make a difference in the world. You can be literally, I have friends who are, again, like unemployed, or they're full-time parents, or they're Uber drivers, and they're already doing a lot for society, for the world, and we have a lot of fun together and, enjoy our lives in different, even though we have different paths and career-wise, like we still get along extremely well. And I think that's incredible. I love that. And so that's one thing I did want to mention. But if you do choose to become an entrepreneur, if you do one day say, hey, maybe I want to start a company one of these days, right? Because that is, they say the American dream, right? Like it is the American dream. And it is true that America is a wonderful place to, and anywhere, by the way, around the world, but especially in America. And I'm biased for saying this, but I feel like because as a woman of color, right, like I would not in another country, it would have been a lot harder for me to be able to start a company in certain places. And so I'm grateful that in America that I didn't face as many of those hurdles as women do in a lot of other countries. And so anyways, just mentioning that, but if you do want to start a company, my biggest advice would be to normalize rejection, because rejection is like a daily part of my life and every entrepreneur's life. I continue to be rejected every single day to this day. If you're not being rejected, you're not doing enough. You're not putting yourself out there as an entrepreneur, right? Rejected by everyone. Job candidates don't want to work for you. Why would I want to work for a random data company, right? Or investors, why would I want to invest in this random data company? You get rejected by a lot of opportunities you apply for. Maybe you're pitching to like a media or, like marketing people or whoever. Yeah, they're all going to reject you. Like, this is not marketable. Lawyers reject us. They're like, oh, we don't want to work with the data company. So it happens all the time, and it's a normal thing. And you have to be able to, put it in a mountain of rejections. For me by now, it's like a huge mountain, and just move on and just continue going from there. And that's how you move on. You just go on with life and continue getting those rejections. And after 100 no's, you get like one yes, and that one yes makes a difference in your life and changes the trajectory of your career. And that's what happened to me. And so that was just one thing I just mentioned. I remember in college, when I received my first an internship I applied to my freshman year, and they rejected me. That hurt so bad. I remember I tried so hard to apply to an internship and they didn't want me. I got rejected, and I just felt so bad. But now I'm like literally a million rejections later. I'm like, now it gets a little better every time. It still stings sometimes. It still hurts because you put a lot of effort into a pitch competition and then you lost. Of course, it's still going to hurt because you're human, right? But you learn to move on a lot faster. You have coping mechanisms and ways to realize, oh, this isn't too bad. It's not really going to affect my life. Let's just move on, right? So that is my biggest lesson I've learned. I used to be very sensitive, I guess, to no. And now I'm like, oh, no is like an everyday thing. And, like yes is like the anomaly, and that's okay. So.
And normalizing no is a great way to be. You're so right. And you're not trying hard enough, like you said, unless you're getting no's all the time. Yeah. I love it. You are brilliant, and I'm a huge fan, and I'm sure now so many of my viewers and listeners are huge fans too. She's Christina Qi. You can find her at ChristinaQi.com, ChristinaQi.com, or at her new company, Dado Bento, DATA Bento, BENTO.com. Christina Qi, thank you so much for being with us today. You are just truly amazing. I know you're going to change the world and make it a better place more than you already have. You've got a long life in front of you and so many other things to do. Thank you for joining us today at the Impact Podcast, and you're always welcome back here.
Thank you, John. It's such an honor to be here.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com.